In these series of videos, we're going to be focusing on the very common restoration that we're all faced with where we have an abfraction at the cervical margin. Now, we've done 3 videos here. It wasn't by design, it was just the way the filming turned out, but we decided to keep it. So bear with me when I go through this. Now, just to set this up, abfractions are very, very interesting restorations that exist, and a lot of people stay away from them, but obviously there's underlying issues that have to be dealt with. So walk through this, and what we will be able to see is the sequencing that occurs so you can do these restorations with no anesthetic and focus on the materials we use and the ability to create these things, and you'll see the technique with no anesthetic and why we're able to do this. So as we start the video, we're going to actually see the restoration ahead of time that's already been micro-etched. It's already had total etch done. And here what we're doing is a 3-step application of the actual restorative material. This is a Beautifil. This is a Beautifil flow, but it's an opaque Beautifil flow. So it's the Beautifil F10, but it would be an opaque. I think this is an opaque A3 or A4, and it allows us to kind of wet the surface to flow in to block out that underlying dark dentin. With that, then we cure that, but we keep it away from the external margin here because it will flow too much. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to apply a Beautifil low flow. Now the Beautifil low flow is a material that is much more viscous. It's F02, and in this case it's a regular. It isn't an opaque, or you could even use opaque. This allows us with an Explorer to tease this right down to the cavo-surface margin along the gingival area. Now we cure that, and what that allows us to do with this low shrinkage material is to create that margin. Once that's done, now we go to our 3rd step. We're going to use a Beautifil high flow. This isn't opaque, it's regular. This allows us to define our cavo-surface margin. Just one thing to qualify here, I believe if you can create a bevel along this right onto the enamel surface, it's better with an ET6. We may have already done this. Now we then go ahead and we tease this in again, and this allows us to lose that white line, to actually have that up on the bevel, but then again, we can actually keep it somewhat away from the gingival area, which should have already been created through the high viscosity material. We cure this again. Now what we've done here is this 3-step blocks everything out underneath. It keeps some of the darker cervical area, intact. And then what we're going to do is in the polishing technique, which will follow, it's going to allow us to go ahead and create that beautiful restoration. Here we use our Montana jack. This is critical in a restoration that doesn't have anesthetic. We don't run a burr along that root surface, along that dentin. Very, very sensitive. If you have a very sharp scaler, you can remove not only the existing flash from the bonding resin that we've used, but it also allows us to actually very carefully remove any of the actual composite restorative material to create a very nicely well-sealed margin. You can feel it with a sharp scaler, the Montana jack, and you're creating that beautiful, beautiful margin in that area that hasn't shrunk away and created that gap. That's a very important piece of this entire restoration, and this will allow us to create something that we can do, again, with no anesthetic. It becomes seamless. It's a huge thing when you show somebody before and after what that is. This segment is a very short one. It's just going to show the final polishing of this abfraction, tooth number 28, and for universal tooth codes, tooth number 44. What we're looking at in this is just the sequence of polishing. And so as we pick this up, we've already done our Montana jack scaling in the previous video. So here we're going to move into defining, apologize for the wobbling here, defining that cavo-surface margin. And this is something which is not at the gingival margin. We've already established this. So in ET6, here we're using, I believe, dry. You can use dry or wet depending on whatever you want. Normally dry, you can actually see where you're going. And you can see in the wobbling here, I can see I've actually shown my mistake, and I actually bumped it a little bit into the gingiva. You'll see that later in the final view. But this just establishes where this margin is. And then we're going to go ahead now. You should keep this dry, keep the powder off, and in this case here, we're going to now move into our ET12. It's another Brassler multi-fluted football. This is always the same sequence we go through from the ET6 to the ET12 in these cases. Some cases you could actually use the ET6 flame burr. So here we go again with the ET12. This is a great burr. What it does, it doesn't really remove any enamel. Very light feather touch, very, very important here. And you're just kind of bringing out wherever that overlaid margin would be. This is critical for the aesthetics and also to eliminate later that awful stained line that always occurs as these flecks. So here we've gone ahead and done this. Now, I apologize again. It's in some cases we can leave these. In a lot of other cases we can then go ahead and you can refine this further with the Dialite Brassler polishing cups, which would be the medium, which is purple, and the orange, which is super fine. We will now show the final view of this tooth number 28 abfraction restoration. Again, we're looking at something here in the series of 3 just to show this. We're looking at a restoration here, and just to review what this is, you can see how nicely it blends in the cavo surface. We can even talk about where we could have done a little better. This probably could be refined a little more at the distal margin there. You can see where we may have banged the gingival area at the crest of the gingiva, probably with the ET12 polishing burr. No worries at all, that will heal nicely, but you can see how well that margin sealed and how aesthetically pleasing that is. And that's just with the 3-step combination using the Beautifil flow, the Beautifil high flow, the Beautifil low flow, and also introducing some of the opaque to block out the underlying sclerotic discolored dentin.